Smart automation, better business. Learn how to optimize your business with Solved.
Okay, Firehose, what questions do you have?
Well, you've answered quite a few of them. On the delivery component, it's sort of between engineering and delivery. Configuration of the out-of-the-box software like Salesforce, the ERPs. Do you know of anybody getting in where the AI agents are actually doing the configuration yet? Or is that one of those
Yes.
to be, sort of an experiment or to be done next year?
Yeah, so it's doable today. It's certainly in the experimentation phase. There are, long and short of it, like we're doing some testing internally because we do run a Salesforce shop. And so and quality is extremely important to us. Our whole reputation kind of rests on the quality of our implementations. So it's not like we're ready to just go like, let it run wild in a client org or anything like that. So we've got some really strict guardrails, but we are doing some experimentation on it, and it's better than I thought it would be. Some of the coding agents, because Salesforce has an API and you can push and pull code and metadata and things, the AIs are quite surprisingly good at interpreting that metadata and figuring out what needs to change and pushing and pulling changes. So especially on the code and automation side, it can do some of its own configuration. And you get into like profiles, custom fields, database objects, those kind of things. Like it can do it. You got to sit there and babysit it. And I don't think it saves much time, but that's just in our early experiments. There's probably somebody figuring out how to do it really well right now that we'll find out about,
Have you come across anybody? On another webinar, I was listening to a realtor talk about his use of a customer support agent. And it turned out that the agent was having a conversation with a client who ended up buying the house that it was providing information for. And the realtor never provided the information to the client that this wasn't an AI. They actually thought it was a human at the other end of the text that was going back and forth. So are you having discussions about the ethical and principled use of these tools? And what are some of the conclusions that are coming out of it? Those conversations.
100%. Yeah, it's the right question to ask. Right now, our recommendation is transparency. Just be transparent, be upfront, because you get into a lot of issues if somebody thinks they're talking to a human and they're talking to an AI, right? So we're big proponents of disclosure and saying if you're going to use AI features, disclose that you're using them. Talk about how people's data will be used. Allow them to opt into that or opt out of it. So I think transparency, you get around a lot of those types of problems you're talking about with the realtor. That said, there are ethical implications. The rabbit hole of ethical implications of AI goes very deep. So yeah, I would say, if I can just nutshell it, that we just recommend transparency and kind of starting from that first principle. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
No, very interesting. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this just for me.
I know. Well, hopefully we'll, get some traction, but it's always fun. I like both. I like it when a ton of people come because we can get through a lot of stuff and make some good connections. But it is fun when I've got a small crew because then I can answer more questions. So it's good.
Right.
There's one other quick thing. I wanted to come back to this checklist. So you mentioned this earlier, and I'll send this over to you if it's helpful for you. Great. If you have feedback, love to hear it. But this is sort of, we talked about bottom-up adoption, top-down adoption. The goal of this would be to highlight areas where there's room to implement more. So yeah, bottom up, you want to check and make sure users have access to AI, policies are aligned, the users have been trained, and that users you're seeing experimentation and sharing, that's a good signal that your policies and messaging is good. And then top-down adoption, it gets to where you're going through each of these domains that we talked about, customer service,
Right.
engineers, and everything, and saying these are the things to watch for. Has AI been implemented such that, like, do your software developers have access to developer tools, those kind of things? So it's a good, like, first step. I'd recommend going through it, and then, yeah, depending on, like, I'm not sure if it's helpful for you in your freelance work, but would appreciate feedback if you have it.
Okay. No, every little piece I think is
Yeah.
valuable. So I appreciate that. I did have one other question, and
Yeah.
that is in your, I mean, you're with you, your whole business is you're not supposed to have failed projects.
We
But
avoid that, yeah.
but my question is, when you've had a project that got in trouble, were you able to identify sort of root causes and then be able to go back and fix them? So you started with a bottom-up adoption, but somebody at the senior level said, I don't believe in this, or it's not safe, and so cut off all the resources kind of thing.
Yeah. There's no project goes perfectly. You have to
Right.
be able to be prepared to roll with the punches. And then you bring up a good point. There's incredible things that this technology can do, and we're just kind of scratching the surface. I think all AI progress could stop right now. And I think we still have a decade of change management and people developing really cool tools and getting more out of the AI. Like, it is really, truly in its infancy, and it doesn't even have to get better to change everything, flip everything like upside down. It's just about, rolling it out. But to your point, the problems that are going to be most valuable to solve are still going to be people problems. That just because the AI can automate something doesn't necessarily mean that it's like easy to get people on board with that or train them how to use it, or there's still a lot of people problems that the AI doesn't necessarily come in and just perfectly solve. It's not going to implement itself, at least not yet. So I would say yes, our first principles on managing projects, identifying root causes, working with stakeholders have more to do with just sort of like our internal approach and project management approach. But of course, yeah, we've run into trouble with projects and stakeholders and had to work through those. I'm curious to know, like, question behind the question. Is there anything specific I can help out with there?
Well, one of the reasons that's on my mind is I was participating in a webinar this morning with Gallup, but it was European. Okay. It was based in Europe, and so there was an association focused on board of director people and Gallup, and they were talking about AI adoption. And Gallup is very much in terms focuses on culture, organizational culture. And that was what it was talking about. And certainly, in my experience, culture has always trumped technology in terms of the major changes. And frankly, having a loss of $8 million was a wonderful motivating factor to push through a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I was, this bottom up versus top down. I've focused mostly on nonprofit and higher education. And with education, there's about a 7-year cycle of everything gets centralized, and then everything gets broken apart, and then it gets centralized again and broken apart. And so it feels like the bottom up, the broken apart, all the innovations happening on the edges, and it's forcing the center to react.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to confirm if that was really happening. And what happens then is it isn't the edge culture that's the problem, it's the core management culture that's the problem. And that's what's got to be focused on to get AI to go enterprise successfully.
100%. It's a unique set of challenges. What you just said is the reason why there's going to be a lot of new entrants that absolutely crush and capture a ton of market share. I think there's going to be a lot of like blood in the water of big established enterprises that are very set in a specific way of doing things that very quickly becomes outdated, and then you have, I mean, this is like tale as old as time here. You have the little guy that is positioned to move fast that just comes in and cleans house.
Right.
So certainly there's going to be some of that. I think that's all the more reason why it's important to move fast for established companies to align and be able to benefit from the changes that are coming. And speaking of just sort of like next steps here, I know this webinar's like sort of targeted to like business owners, as you may have noticed. There's just like kind of going through each of the categories and then talking about bottom up, top down, that kind of thing. If you find that you could use an assist on an AI project or you have questions, feel free to reach out. So there's lots of ways for business owners to like get in touch with us, and lots of ways where we can help out. If somebody were to go through that checklist and identify a gap, we can help with that specifically. If you were to have them or yourself fill out the contact us form and just let us know which item on the list that you'd want an assist with. And then we also can play the role of being the internal owner. So one of the items on the checklist is someone in the organization, this is top down, someone in the organization owns the outcome of automating the business.
Okay.
Sometimes an internal stakeholder is the best to do that. Sometimes firms like to bring in somebody else. So we've got a subscription offering, and I mentioned that a little bit earlier. This is the team that I manage, where we've got many, many months of experience helping organizations automate and managing support for them. So happy to play that role as well. We also have on the homepage on AI expertise, there's this webinar sign up, which is this. And then the AI Adoption Accelerator Workshop is, we're going to go through the frameworks that I showed really quick in much greater detail, and then give a company by the end, they would have kind of in 1 day workshop, have a tool selected, guided onboarding, training for them, training materials so they can train their people, provide templated policies, terms of service adjustments. We're not lawyers, so of course, we'd want a lawyer to take a look at that, but a starting point. And then be able to walk through the proven best practices in all of those areas that I mentioned, guides for choosing an automation framework, data integration systems, prompting, when to use what. There's a whole lot, but we try and streamline the process of getting up to speed.
Good.
So
that's good to know.
Feel free. Yeah. Keep us in mind if we can be helpful. Thank you for coming. Any other questions I can answer before we wrap up?
No, that's it. Thanks very much. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, of course. Have a great day.
Okay, you too.
Yep. See ya.
Thank you so much for watching. We can't wait to help you automate your business. Please like, comment, or subscribe for more.